A special welcome to those of you who are new to the stage. The Createch stage is hosted by the Creative Industries Council and supported by Facebook, UK Research and Innovation, Moore Kingston Smith, and Digital Catapult. I'm Janet Hull, and I'm your MC for today. CogX is all about community, and if the creative industries is a community you want to belong to, just email us at createch@thecreativeindustries.co.uk, and we'll make sure to keep you involved. The overall theme of CogX this year is how do we get the next 10 years right? And for us in the UK creative industries, for this next session, this means how do we expand our understanding of the opportunities provided by this new world where creativity meets technology to enhance audience engagement, interaction, and experience? It's been curated by UK Research and Innovation, and it focuses on their Audience of the Future programme and 4 projects which represent the most advanced set of public trials of virtual, augmented, and mixed reality content anywhere in the world. Perhaps it's no wonder then that this Audience of the Future programme was trailed by DCMS Minister Caroline Dinenage in her opening speech yesterday, and also heralded by Digital Catapult in their session later yesterday morning. And it's great to see that 2 of our Createch ones to watch companies, Factory 42 and Smartify, are also integral to the programme. I, for one, can't wait to meet the chief protagonists. There will be Q&A from 6 p.m, so do jot down your questions as the session progresses so that it can be prepared for a lively discussion following. So a big welcome now to the man leading the charge, Andrew Chitty, Challenge Director, Audience of the Future at UK Research and Innovation.
Thanks very much, Janet, and it's great to be here on the creative stage at CogX, and welcome to this Audience of the Future session. Now, as Janet said, I'll shortly be joined by 3 great panelists who will talk about the projects that they're doing at the moment and how they're using augmented reality and mixed reality to develop really ambitious new experiences and develop new audiences for those. But we'll also be talking about how they're coping with the disruption caused by COVID-19. Now, obviously, that's a massive challenge for all of us, for all creative businesses, and for all creative technology businesses. But I think our 3 panelists today will also be able to map out how it could also be an opportunity in the way that it's disrupting audience behaviour. But first, I should probably set the scene a little. So the session takes its title, as Janet said, from a programme we started at UKRI almost 2 years ago as part of the government's industrial strategy. Now, the idea of Audience of the Future was to position the UK and UK creative businesses so that they could make the best use of the advances in technology, in immersive technologies, so augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, haptics, and all those good things. But our ambition wasn't just to develop the technology and support companies to develop the technology. It was really to support companies to develop the business propositions that will bring the revenues of the future. And that's why we called it Audience of the Future. So it was about developing new experiences that would engage new audiences and really advancing the state of the art, not just technologically, but in terms of audience proposition and in terms of commercial and proposition and business models as well. And really central to that were 4 big demonstrator projects, which will be going live across the remainder of this year and succeed into next year, which audiences can take part in. And so I've got representatives of 2 of those projects here with me today. So if we can start to introduce the panel. I'd like to introduce Susan Cummings and John Cassy. Susan, introduce yourself and the company that you represent.
Thanks, Andrew. My name is Susan Cummings. So I'm the managing director of a small company in Wales called Tiny Rebel Games. And I'm also co-founder of Fictioneers. Fictioneers is a consortium of 3 UK companies. Sugar Creative, who's also based in Wales, Potato, who's based out of London, as well as my company. And we're working together with University of South Wales as a research partner to deliver the moving image demonstrator, which is Wallace and Gromit in the big fix-up in partnership with Aardman.
Cool. So we're going to see a little bit of that in a second. But John, it'd be good if you could introduce yourself so that people know what they're going to see in a moment.
Will do. Yeah, no, thanks, Andrew. So my name is John Cassy. I'm the founder and chief executive of a company called Factory 42. We are an immersive content studio exploring new forms of entertainment and storytelling at the intersection of creativity and technology, normally based in the sort of arts hub of Somerset House in central London, but currently scattered in various bedrooms, home offices and kitchens across the UK. And we're working on a big project with two of the world's finest museums in the Natural History Museum and Science Museum, along with London's Almeida Theatre, Sky, the American headset mixed reality company called Magic Leap, plus the University of Exeter and Shopping Centre group Into, to create new forms of experiences based around robots and dinosaurs and doing things with groups of friends. So more of that in a minute, I guess.
Fantastic, John. And Susan, so perhaps we can see a little bit of dinosaurs and robots and a little bit of the big fix-up if we roll the first VT.
Step on it, Gromit. There's not a moment to lose.
Okay, so that's a little clip there of dinosaurs and robots and a little bit of the augmented reality that you'll be able to see in Fictioneers, which we'll talk to Susan about later. But it's time to introduce our third guest, because Audience of the Future also, as well as the big demonstrator programs, what we're trying to do is support R&D in lots of creative SMEs. And I'm joined also as our third panelist today by Anna Lowe. Anna, can you introduce yourself and Smartify, please?
Sure, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I'm Anna Lowe. I am one of the co-founders and director of partnerships at Smartify. Smartify is the world's most downloaded museum app. We've been described as the kind of Shazam and Spotify for art. So basically using your phone to scan artworks, get the information immediately, but also doing some interesting things around integrating AR experiences into that.
Fantastic, thanks, Anna. And I think we can show a little bit of Smartify in action, and then we'll get rolling with a discussion.
Hopeless passion for the beautiful mortal Adonis.
Thanks, great. So what we've got here is three projects that are dealing with mixed reality, augmented reality, as you've seen, and also with spaces. So live events, museum spaces. So that's something we'll develop as we talk about it, what that means in the world of COVID-19. But first, I'm going to come to Susan. So Susan, we'll start with the big fix-up because it's an amazing project, and actually it's a fascinating one to explain. So can you talk a little bit about what big fix-up is, but also what it is that you set out to do and where you're at?
Sure. Can we put the slides up on screen, perhaps? Not sure if that's, there we go. Yeah, so Fictioneers are reshaping the future of storytelling by creating a new, rich, and multi-layered platform where for the first time ever, you get to become a part of Wallace and Gromit's story. And it's Wallace and Gromit in the Big Fix-Up. It's a story using the latest and immersive technologies that promises to bring together these globally iconic characters and state-of-the-art storytelling with all the comedic charm you've come to expect from Aardman. And it's also Wallace and Gromit's first foray into augmented reality. Rendered in CG using the latest technology, fans will be able to interact in a host of new ways and get closer than ever to the iconic duo. Later this year, fans are going to join Wallace and his faithful hound as their latest business venture, Spick and Spanners, gets off the ground and takes on the contract of a lifetime to fix up Bristol. So there's an app, which is the center of the experience, which will be available on Google and Apple devices. And it's how you'll interact with and interface with what's a fully real-time story that includes AR and mixed reality, gameplay, though it's not a game, new CG, comic strips, AR phone calls, and more. What you see here on screen are a variety of different augmented reality jobs that you'll take on for Wallace as part of his company. And you'll see that they're placed here safely around the garden of somebody on our team. The story was meant to culminate with the users coming to Bristol, with a call to arms to come to Bristol for what promised to be one of the most epic, ambitious, multi-user AR location-based experiences in the world. And then COVID happened, of course. Now, fortunately, we always had some degree of home finale planned for the story because we knew we couldn't get everybody to come to Bristol. But that was meant to be a really scaled down, minimal version of the finale of the story. We wanted you to have a reason to come to Bristol after all. Now, we're assuming everyone's going to have the experience from home. Anything else feels like it would be too difficult to plan for and also irresponsible. If you can't come to Bristol, we can bring Bristol to you wherever you are. So Fictioneers used a company called Phantasmo to LiDAR scan key parts of Bristol and create dense 3D point clouds and occlusion models for the map locations. What this allows us to do is to place AR interactions with precision, and it helps to create a fully immersive experience. When the COVID crisis unfolded, we rushed to think about what this could mean for the finale. And we found, fortunately, that Phantasmo, an American company in LA, were just as excited about this new challenge as we were. How do we bring this experience home? So we've been working together with them to take this 3D point cloud data, to clean it up, to visually enhance it, and then to miniaturize it and allow you to have these experiences within the safety of your home or local garden or local park. The at-home experience will be the end-to-end big fix-up that we always envisioned from a story standpoint. There'll still be a live experience this year. We'll do it as an invite-only test. And in the year following, our team plans to roll this model out in several cities within the UK and plans to ultimately go global to non-UK cities. The result, we think, is something that audiences will be able to engage with and think of as a new way of having live events. We have to rethink how people experience theater, sports, concerts, ballet, how we can do it safely and responsibly. And to us, it's an opportunity to make these kinds of events more broadly accessible and inclusive.
Thank you. So it's a really interesting one, of course, because obviously Bristol is one city at the moment where there is an awful lot of redesign going on the streets, even as we speak. But you haven't been set back too much by C19, really, in that you were always, your major destination to capture the audience was always on the mobile. And I think you're using some interesting new technology there, which was in the Unity keynote at AWE, wasn't it? So you're using some very, sort of cutting edge new deployments of their technology.
Yeah, you know, we really took this R&D as an opportunity to look at what was out there and figure out what was the most state-of-the-art things we could use to build this experience. It wasn't like an off-the-shelf solution to how to tell a real-time story in the way we envisioned. So one of those technologies is Unity's Mars technology, which we were part of the AWE keynote for last week. And Mars is this really cool technology that allows your device to understand the space that it's in, which allows you to place objects and place movable items and give them intelligence. So for example, being able to put one of Wallace's contraptions in your room and have it be able to intelligently path around the room and avoid obstacles is something really exciting to us that really feels like it brings this world to life.
Great, John. Perhaps we can move on to dinosaurs and robots, and perhaps as you explain, again, amazing project, but you've had some bigger challenges probably by the COVID-19 situation, in that what you were trying to build is a mixed reality location-based experience which throws up its own problems. Yeah,
I mean, I think until COVID hit, it was feeling like a really good plan, and then COVID hit, somewhat more complicated. Effectively, what we were trying to do, and we continue to try to do, was to get groups of people to gather in a ticketed experience and go through that experience through a series of rooms which have amazing sort of theatrical real world sets and actors, and while wearing headsets, and they go through in a group, and there's a story that unfolds and there are various things that you do. But of course, when COVID hit, the idea of having groups of people who didn't necessarily know each other in confined spaces wearing headsets that they just, you know, somebody else will have worn previously, not the best thing to be doing during COVID.
Tell us a bit more about dinosaurs and robots, and where you're at now, and how,
sure,
if you can, how you see that you will return to the location-based experience in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So the project was very much envisaged as a location-based experience. So we were due to be launching these experiences in the Science Museum and in the Natural History Museum this summer. We had begun testing some smaller experiences in the Metro Centre in Gateshead, so in the shopping centre up there. Timing was not great. We'd done some sort of soft launch, it had gone very well, but then on the day that all our partners were about to promote it, that was when social distancing came in, so we had to pull it. So what we've had to do is think imaginatively, think innovatively, and we've had to pivot. And so what we're now doing for the foreseeable future, I mean, the intention is still very much to come back to those location-based experiences, but we are creating some augmented reality apps that people with mobile phones, so both Android and iOS, will be able to use at home or outside around the themes of dinosaurs and robots. We're aiming them at a younger age group. So what's really good is it can allow us to target a younger audience, so between about the ages of 7 and 12, so a real family audience, whereas the location-based experiences are for older audiences, 14 plus, due to headsets. So it enables us to go up with this younger audience with some really cool augmented reality experiences that people will have fun doing, they'll learn from, and they'll be able to do at home, particularly, you know, while schools are disrupted. We think there should be a great demand for them.
So that's something I think we'll come back to later, is how these changes that have been forced on us by COVID actually become opportunities to build new audiences, and maybe people are more experimental with what they're looking for at the moment, I think, as well, or more imaginative. So bringing in Anna, Smartify is obviously, as we've seen on the clip, you're in museums and galleries at the moment, and it would be good if you could just, you know, talk us through what Smartify can do, but also then start to think, those museum galleries are closed. Some of them are announcing as we speak that they're going to reopen next month, maybe the month after, but it's still going to be tough. So it'd be good to get a sense of where you're at, and then what the kind of opportunities are, do you think?
Yeah, I guess from a starting point to say that the business model of Smartify is based on museums who use the software, and it's free to the end users. So for us, with all of our development, we're thinking about what's most useful for the museums and where are they heading in terms of their business models. So obviously, if I could just have the slide up, actually, Smartify is kind of thought of to be that kind of in-gallery experience. It's for scanning and getting information, but we also integrate with museum services, so things like membership schemes, things like that people see as part of that experience, and donations and things like that. When COVID hit, I think the first kind of response of museums was to think, right, what can we get online? Let's get everything virtual, the virtual museum. And I think that, that has its merits, but it hasn't necessarily been hugely successful, or at least, there aren't business models yet to support that. Putting a virtual gallery together isn't the same as being in a museum at all, and the business models aren't there to support that, as I said. I also think some of the user experiences for some of these online galleries, like kind of clicking through a Google Street View of the British Museum, it's not ideal. It doesn't work as well as you kind of want it to. So we very quickly felt that although, we were seeing huge engagement on the app, engagement increased for us by about 400%. And Apple, was promoting us on the app stores alongside kind of Duolingo and Skillshare as a kind of a service to engage with at home. We quickly felt that in terms of where we wanted to focus product development and thinking about what the future is going to be, we wanted to support museums in reopening, because we felt that museums in some ways are less like theatres and more like supermarkets, in that you can walk around them, you can be socially distant, and you're kind of looking at things as you go around. And so how could we support that new visitor journey? So I'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a minute, but kind of we were just thinking about what's the new pre-visit, what's the new arrival, what's during the visit, and then thinking about features in the app that we could develop to support that.
Actually move on to that, what can you do to help the museums on this journey of reintroducing visitors? Because in a way, as John's talked about with dinosaurs and robots, this mixed reality group experience, that's one level that's really, really hard to see just at the moment. But there are perhaps, as you said, ways of guiding people through museums. So what can you do for them that helps them get back in business and keep you in business, obviously?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, in terms of, if you think about what the museum experience at the moment, you might kind of think about those kind of rented devices where you've got an audio guide, you're putting your headset on, and you're walking around with a kind of, physical device that you've rented. For a lot of museums, that's kind of gone. Obviously, John mentioned, the difficulty with headsets. It's the same, obviously, with anything you touch. And Smartify is, really helpful for museums because it's on people's own devices. So it's a free download. You just have it on your phone. So that's kind of one barrier that's already taken care of. In terms of other features in the app, obviously the scanning feature that's already part of Smartify, it will scan up to 10 meters away. So if you're standing back from works and other people, you don't have to kind of lean in to read a wall label. So we're seeing that a lot of museums are finding that as helpful as part of their kind of remobilization strategy. In terms of new features, one of the things we've been thinking a lot about is retail and e-commerce. At the moment, e-commerce for museums, it hasn't been a huge area of growth compared to like other sectors. So museums roughly see about kind of 5 to 8% of their total retail is done online. Most of it's through the physical museum, so through the shop itself. And obviously with social distancing, how many people can you get into the shop? It has to be cashless. There's all these kind of challenges, but it's a really important revenue stream for museums and for our partners. So we're looking at ways to integrate that as part of the visitor experience, as when you're going around and scanning things that you can see, right, well, there's, certain merchandise, it's got pictures of the sunflowers on, and a kind of click and collect model are things that we're discussing at the moment, similar to, what you might have at Argos. So things like that, I think are interesting for museums. Also, just in general, audio guides is a way to kind of manage visitor flow has always been used. I mean, that's how audio guides are used often, but making it explicit, kind of stop and start points, and saying to people, you know, kind of at the end of this track, please move to the next room. So just things like that that we can add in very easily to support that social distancing.
Thanks. What I'm struck by all three of you is you've got roadmaps, you've got plans, you've got big things that you're trying to do, but these are at the moment substantially impacted by COVID. But rather than stand back and say, well, we can't do that, we'll wait until we can, you're each looking at different pivots. But one part of that's got to be looking at what the audience wants. So I'm interested in, as you devise these new plans, as you adjust to the circumstances and as you be as agile as you can, what is it about the audience behaviours that you're finding people are doing differently? So I suppose what it is given what you've looked at, what's the audience opportunity here? I think, John, you've talked about it as it gets you away in the short term from headsets, so you can go down in the age group, but perhaps that's a place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look for the positives in these challenging times, you know, we went from a situation where it was just not possible to do the project that we had planned to do because the locations themselves, the museums shut, and social distancing meant things weren't, you know, going to work in the short term. However, there is a real opportunity for us to get to an under a younger audience who we hadn't previously thought we were going to be able to get to, because the Magic Leap headsets had an age restriction of 14 plus. And the research that we see, the user testing that we're doing, is showing that, you know, kids in that 7 to 12 age group are very much taken with augmented reality. We're fortunate that we spent the best part of a year or so creating some really, really world-class assets and animations of robots and scientifically accurate dinosaurs. So there is an opportunity to go out and engage audiences in new ways. We had to sort of scrape ourselves up from the floor after the sort of blow of COVID hit. But you know what? Not without wishing to sort of oversimplify it, there is always uncertainty everywhere. And I think that if you, as a company and as a consortium, take a view that you take responsibility for your own destiny, then actually a lot of good can come out of these things.
Susan, how does it feel for you? Because in a way, you're now completing your experience in one mode, whereas and then going to do live almost as a separate product. So you've got two products now rather than one.
Yeah. And, you know, some things are similar to John. We also had planned to be in the 13 plus sort of range of age because of some of the social media aspects of a live real-time experience. When this all went down, and as a parent myself, I felt sort of, we felt an obligation to revisit that and figure out if there was a way to make a Wallace and Gromit story more broadly accessible. And so we think we've managed to do that, and so that we won't have the age restriction when it comes out. We've also, you know, user research has been a really heavy focus for our project, both on the University of South Wales side and within our UX UI team. And we've been user testing since it was on paper and continue to. We found a tool called Look Back that our team has subscribed to, which is allowing us to keep on with the user testing, but all remotely, which is really exciting. We've also found a way to test the live experience remotely, to be able to localize to the 3D LiDAR scan data remotely so that we can actually continue to test the live experience when we're ready to do it.
So do you think, all three of you, that the impacts of COVID and the ways that it might have changed audience behaviors and audience looking for content online, do you think it's accelerated some of the things the shifts to some of the things that you're trying to do?
I mean, if I can jump in there, yeah, for us, absolutely. I think for as long as we've had Smartify, people have always said, even today, you know, should people have phones in galleries? It's, you know, so common still to say that. And I think, you know, it's a supercomputer. At the end of the day, it's a way to get information, just like a label or anything else. And we've, you know, pretty much everybody now has one in their pocket. So to not use that was always kind of crazy to us. And I think this has pushed museums actually to think about some of the older models that weren't working, but they were just kind of always the done thing, and actually to embrace some change, particularly around Obviously, if you use a digital guide rather than an offline one, a kind of an old rented device, you have actual data on what your audiences are looking at, how they're moving through the gallery. And that's hugely valuable in terms of personalization, in terms of marketing, in terms of everything we now expect from Netflix, from Spotify, from Amazon. And none of that exists in our sector yet in museums. So I think it will push people to rethink digital business models, rethink membership programs, and how they kind of connect up the entire visitor journey before, during, and after.
John, does it feel like that, although initially, obviously, it's a massive setback that you can't actually do the location-based experience, they're kind of all singing, all dancing, but do you think in terms of developing the market in the future, this combination of going to the home audience and integrating that as you return to LBEs, and maybe moving can the museums start to see these these more media-rich experiences as something that can export more than perhaps they could at the start?
I think so. Yes. I mean, as a company, we had always had delivering entertainment into the home and delivering learning into the home on our roadmap, but it was 2 or 3 years out. And the COVID, it's clear that education has been hugely disrupted in many different ways. And as a parent myself, I've spent a lot of time on digital education products, doing a bit of homeschooling, and they're incredibly variable. There is also some brilliant technology coming through, which is enabling you to engage users in new ways. So I think it's really, really great from a sort of education and from a potential business opportunity. And I also think for the museums, I think we'd like to believe that it's something that is really, really great for them, because they're largely based around buildings with physical collections that the user has to go and visit, and those buildings are now closed. So it's how do you get either the collections, and we're not in this instance getting the collections to audiences, but what we're doing is we're trying to get scientific themes, learning, fulfilling the mission of these museums to engage with audiences, and we're doing it in a fun way, but with real learning outcomes built into it.
Do you think that some of these kind of changes will stick as well? So one of the ideas that we've seen a lot of changes in audience behaviour. We support this Policy and Evidence Centre that's doing a tracking study at the moment, tracking some of those changes during lockdown. Now, some people, I think, are hoping that as we unlock, however long that takes, and it seems to perhaps take longer in the UK than it would elsewhere, that people will revert. Is that how you see it, or do you think there are some things here that are going to change and going to stick?
I think that some things are going to stick. For us, I think I was always concerned about having a live event that was just in one city and how we could make that accessible to people who weren't there. We talked a lot about what interaction could somebody in Belfast have with this experience in Bristol that was happening, and what's a way of bringing people together. And now it's become kind of irrelevant where you are. It certainly made us think more quickly about how we scale this beyond the UK, because if none of us are in Bristol, what does it matter where we are? But I think in the future, when live events do become possible again, this is a way that people who that's not accessible to for whatever reason, they can't get to Bristol, or they can't walk around or whatever. It's a way of being able to interact and make things accessible to everybody. So I do hope that it sticks for sure.
So that takes us into another kind of interesting point that I know you've all got kind of stakes in many ways. So Anna, you've got lots of international clients. John, you've got a big partnership spinning up, I know, in Shanghai to do these things. Is actually one of the other things here is that if we come out of lockdown slower and more uncertainly than other markets, are there things that we should be looking at those other markets even more, and again accelerating looking at that?
Go on, John.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. So I think, I think there's we've always felt that if we could get the product right around dinosaurs and robots, there would be a strong international appetite for it. You mentioned Shanghai. You only have to spend a day in Shanghai going around the different museums and galleries and experiences there to see that there is an enormous appetite for this kind of work. And so those sorts of markets are really, really exciting. I think the challenge is to create products that are easily exportable. One of the many reasons we chose dinosaurs and robots is that there's sort of a globally insatiable demand for both, and they sound pretty much the same in Shanghai as they do in Southampton. So if you get it right, I think there is a real opportunity, and it's something we are exploring.
Yeah, I think the ambition and the reality is sometimes not quite the same. I think museums particularly, but everyone at the moment is kind of talking about the virtual, where we are at, and John was mentioning the kind of the variable quality of education resources. And I think it's easy to say, behavior has changed, there's all these new resources available, but the reality is, some of them aren't very good, and there's a lot of work to do to get us to where we need to be. And I think for museums, one of the good things about the closures of the buildings has been a time to kind of rethink some of the things that weren't working very well, like the Blockbuster exhibition, sending artworks around the world like their postcards, is not good for the environment. So really rethinking actually the core fundamentals of business models, and that takes time. So the more time that we've been closed, I think the longer people have really been thinking differently about what this means for the future, rather than just how will it change on a very surface level, audience behavior.
And I guess that thinking's common to organisations around the world, isn't it? That's just as true for museums in Australia, or as it is for the UK. Susan, I'm kind of interested, because it almost seems like, you're a games company, Tiny Rebel. I guess it's in the title, Tiny Rebel Games. It's a games company, but as you scale this, you could be franchising out as events essentially around these properties that are navigated through augmented reality on the phone. And in a way, I think one of the most exciting things when people can see Big Fix Up is it's the next Wallace and Gromit movie. It's as rich and as deep as a movie. And so, but it's an interesting thing to think about where you'll be as a company.
Well, yeah, there are a couple of things on that. The biggest thing has been trying to get across the fact that it's not a game, which is always a struggle with games in your title. We're calling it an augmented story. And, we've built this back-end framework for real-time storytelling, constraint system. Because if you try to think about Netflix, right? Netflix changed the idea of having to sort of come back every week and see the next episode. You can now binge watch. We're trying to sort of sit somewhere between there, because if you have a story that takes a month to unfold and you join anytime other than the first few days, you're going to be behind. And so we have this back-end system that allows us to meter out the story and allow people to catch up. And we think that there are lots of different ways about thinking about where the Big Fix Up can go. There's obviously the city model of putting it in other cities, but that's difficult to scale. We're thinking about a lot of different things, how we can scale that back to smaller experiences that could be event-like in locations when locations become viable again. We think of museums and hotels and shopping malls and cruise ships. What do these live experiences mean, and how can we bring people together?
I guess one of the things also that's helped you, John, and you, Susan, is to adapt, to be agile with all this kind of uncertainty, is that you've got common technologies now. So basically, you've got real-time game engines underlying all of this. You're making assets in those, and I suppose that's another kind of feature of the way production is changing, the way that we're making things is changing. I don't know, Anna, I don't know how much that applies to Smartify, perhaps not to the same degree, but I guess that's one of the things that helps you deal with the uncertainty, is you create assets that it turns out can be deployed in different ways.
Yeah, I think I think there's definitely a degree of that. I mean, we've always taken the view that we should be, if you're going to go to the enormous sort of trouble, the love, the attention that you put into creating a T-Rex that is completely scientifically accurate and beautiful, then trying to get it to the widest possible
with
audience.
or without feathers.
Yeah, well, exactly. It changes every fortnight, but in terms of getting that out as wide as possible on as many platforms as possible is the way to go. So, and that's what's, it's great that things like Unity really provide a platform to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we built Smartify. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, you go on.
No, I was going to say, we built Smartify to be scalable. Like, that was the goal from the start, that museums wouldn't have to, spend lots of money and time building their own apps for, every single museum in the world, because at the end of the day, the way that visitors go to museums is fairly similar. And so, for us, being able to scale up and work internationally was kind of part of the business model from the start, and is even more important now that we can't kind of get out there and do a lot of bespoke work.
Now, one of the things, because we're getting towards the end now, one of the things that characterises some of the other sectors that UKRI deals with is, in times of uncertainty like this, the first thing that gets cut is the R&D budget. So if you're a big engineering company, it's the first thing that goes. Doesn't drive to the bottom line. It's all about the future. So stop the R&D budget. Your 3 small SMEs, you're almost entirely R&D in some ways. There's lots of, it's the last thing that you can drop. What do you think we need to do to come out of this? To help you, and kind of how do you see yourselves developing as companies over the next, say, 12 months? Whilst COVID's still a factor, it will be across all of that time. How do you keep innovating and keep the show on the road? And what do you need from funders like ourselves to help you?
I guess I'd want to first say that the support we've had from Innovate has been what's made it possible. For our companies, we've all managed to sort of scale up in many different areas. Fictioneers is 3 companies in different disciplines. One's a game company, one's an AR VR agency, and one's a back-end company. But that's really blurred over the last year and a half because of the way we approached the project was to muck everybody together as Fictioneers and have milestones that are really across the 3 companies. It's really upskilled everybody to the point that it's really hard to say who does what anymore in the project. And so it's been incredibly important to us as companies. And so we're really grateful for the support and for the work that Andrew, you've been doing to continue to support us to help figure out a way that we can keep an R&D. It's difficult for small companies, these grants. The applications are challenging, as and we kind of learned by the seat of our pants how to apply for one. And so it's a daunting process. So I think the more the process can be, the veil can be, lifted, like what KTN tries to do, to try to talk people through what these grants mean, how to apply for them, how to form consortiums and stuff. I think is really important to SMEs because it's such a scary process and so dominated typically by big companies.
I would totally agree with that. And I think just to add to that, I think for us, having R&D support and kind of grant support is huge. But for us, during any downturn or during difficulty, like the key thing is cash flow, right? That's number one. And then the second thing is just try to look where the new opportunities are, become that category defining business. And that's where we're trying to focus on, right, what does the museum need right now, and to kind of use the opportunity to kind of, to grow.
Yeah, no, I just add that. I mean, we've had brilliant support from Innovate. It's very easy at the minute for people having all sorts of pops at the government, but they've been incredible for us. In terms of innovation, I mean, COVID forces you to innovate every single day, right? And so to know we've got that support underpinning our project is brilliant. And given how enormous the creative industries are for the UK and how technology is going to disrupt them beyond recognition over the next 10 years, I think it's fantastic that you've kind of kept going with this and enabling us to keep on pushing on, because I'm pretty certain that some really strong learnings are going to kind of come out of this for the wider industry, and we'll be out there sharing what we found.
Okay, that's thank you. You're making me blush now. So that's to end it and say thanks to Anna Lowe from Smartify, to John Cassy from Factory 42, and Susan Cummings from Fictioneers / Tiny Rebel Games. And I'll hand back to Janet now, and we'll be taking Q&A in 15 minutes. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Andrew and team. I love the enthusiasm of the UKRI Audience of the Future team. It's a prime example of what the Creative Industries Council stands for. Sometimes we say CIC. It stands also for cross-industry collaboration, and obviously international collaboration within that. UKRI are a funding organisation that puts creative businesses in touch with academics to push the boundaries of innovation with new techniques, new tools, with these demonstrators for the greater good of the industry and for future commercial exploitation. And the programme is ongoing. You've heard just now about 2 demonstrator projects, which in broad terms talk to the entertainment experience of the future and the museum experience of the future. And there are more. In the break before the Q&A, UKRI would like to show another video which features 2 new projects by Audience of the Future and Creative Industries Clusters programmes that are extending the boundaries of what's possible, this time in esports and VR multiplayer experiences. So you can see that there's a lot to find out about and to get involved with, because there are opportunities for innovative businesses out there to compete, to be involved on these sorts of projects through Innovate and through UKRI. The team started talking about it toward the end, and I'm sure it's something that Andrew can pick up with in the Q&A that follows. So thanks again. For those of you with priority passes, hold fire and join the Q&A at 6 o'clock. All of you stay, please, to watch the video. And for those who don't have the priority passes, we have another programme at 6 o'clock, from live to virtual, again talking about the impact of COVID-19 on the way we do things these days. Thank you. Can we show the video, please?
Welcome to ESL One Hamburg, our second MVP of the year, and this is our first opportunity to take the product to the consumer. We've really scaled up the MVP this time in Hamburg. Our application has gone live to public for the first time in its second iteration. We've got the dashboard for the talent and the backstage production team, which is really giving them a lot more insights. We've also got the first demonstration of using a virtual studio with Doc 10, and of course we've got that all-important virtual reality experience which we have on demo on our booth.
So one of the challenges that we as content producers are facing is to make whatever happens on the display accessible to the audience. Dota is a highly complex game with multiple of heroes, different items, different combinations, so a lot of data gets generated. And with the backup of the data that's provided by Weaver, does not only help people who are new into the game to understand the basics, but only help the experts to dive deeper into the content and to the materia of Dota 2.
We're soft launching the VR app and the mobile app today, really trying to make it so it's public ready, and it's just been launched into open beta. So in version 1 we had 3 different screens which players had to swipe between to get to the information. What we've done now is made it as one central location where they can get everything they want at the fingertips straight away. What the user can do in the VR application, not only have they got a personalised private experience where they can kind of drill into the map data, they've also got an area where they can go and experience the actual live stadium at the same time.
At this event, we've deployed 3 different VR cameras, 2 8K cameras, and a stereoscopic camera behind the players, which gives a really intimate viewpoint on stage. Our focus group back in the UK are watching the event live. We're capturing metrics in real time so we can analyse the way that they're watching and experience the event. And when we get back to the UK, we'll be following up directly with them to get some more qualitative feedback from their experiences.
So the challenge with video is obviously the high volume of data rates. We're going to high resolution data, stereoscopic surround vision. All of those create huge data volumes that we've got to distribute out to possibly hundreds of thousands of users. We've been evaluating different CDNs from many of the cloud providers like Amazon and Google, and currently we've gone with Google. So we don't have to worry about data streaming to local servers. It takes the load off our back-end clients.
What we were doing is in terms of live feed was brilliant because you can see who's got the advantage, who's deploying the tactics, what strategies are going on, and before you know it, you're kind of hooked into the game and it gets you far closer to the actual action.
The Weaver app really gives you the context that you need to understand where you are in a Dota game, how it's going to play out from here on out. It gives you that extra bit of knowledge.
I really like the way that the app actually kind of translates the amount of data that is in Dota and kind of condensing it down and visualizing it in an easy to view way.
You've got basically a framework for how the game can look, and now you're looking at what's the next predictive part of this. Where is the game going to go in the next 20 minutes? You've got win probabilities, all of these unique things that take it to the next level.
We're now starting to really see that overall vision, the seamless experience that is across the app, across the professional tools for the caster, across the virtual studio, all infused with exciting data, creating an all-encompassing experience for the viewers.
The ambition for the virtual studio element is to be able to give a much more concise, informed narrative behind the game that's just been played. We're taking the same data that's been driven into the mobile app and the VR experience, but give that to our presenting talent, our on-screen talent that fully understand the game from a really high level. The next stage of the virtual studio development is really exciting. Two key areas. The first being to look at the studio design itself. We think that we can expand on the scale of it from our first proof of concept, but also we really want to flesh out some of those presenter tool sets a lot further.
So the two next big things for Weaver are hyper-personalization, tailoring the content even more, taking maybe people's own data and opening our experiences up to also be tools for creation of content, to really give people the tools to author content and to be successful creators themselves.
It's been an incredible journey so far. We've had a huge amount of response from industry, broadcast, press, and obviously the all-important stakeholders, that's the community from Dota 2 themselves.
Today we are not in our virtual studio as usual. We're actually in an entirely different space. We've left the planet. We are in, well, space, as you can see, and I'm joined by one Alex from Co-op Innovations. So Space Team is a how many players is Space Team?
Up to 6 players.
6 players, there you go, yeah. Multi-platform VR game coming to Quest and PC VR tomorrow, May 21st.
We're all really big fans of the original game made by Henry, who's a Sleeping Beast Games out in Montreal, I believe. And yeah, we licensed the game from him a couple of years back and then developed it into the VR version. We love, our company's called Cooperative Innovations. We love making cool cooperative things when in VR and AR, and so we thought bringing Space Team to this platform would be the perfect match. And all the animations for the characters you see, we have our in-house technology called Ichabod, and we use that, and it's a inverse kinematics engine that obviously takes the head position from your headset and your hands, and then animates the character and avatar, so you can move around. I can squat, I can grab things, and do whatever. And it approximates and animates it so it looks legitimate, and obviously with the mouth sync you've got as well, so when I'm talking from my microphone you hear me and see my mouth moving in the game. So yeah, we've got a lot of in-house technology that we combined with the property of Space Team to make it seem as naturalistic and as fun as possible.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.